Hi and welcome from your ITC Geeks. My name is Trapper Hallam, and in this video we're going to show you how to up your Schoology testing game. At this point we've all become very familiar with creating and making assignments and assigning them in Schoology. We've probably even given some tests and quizzes too pretty successfully. But if you're anything like me, what you're going to worry about is the validity of your test. I'm constantly monitoring for screenshots, students collaborating, sharing information. So how do we deal with that? Well, the answer seems easy. Make multiple tests. But that's kind of its own problem, isn't it? The ability to make one test takes a massive amount of time. And to make 2 or 3 more sometimes just isn't feasible. So what are we to do? I'm here for you. Let me introduce the idea of question banks in Schoology. And then we can create and talk about students getting different questions on the same test at the same time. Better yet, if we give them multiple attempts on the same test, they can see different questions each time they take it. This opens the door to a mastery test. Now you can test your students for mastery, understanding a topic, versus just once, where maybe they have an off day. But now you can really get at if they know this material. I know, right? This is crazy. This is one of the little known features of Schoology, and by far my favorite. Okay, so without hyping this awesome ability up too much, let's go ahead and take a look at it in action so you get an idea of what we're going to show you in this video. Let's take a look. Okay, so here we are over at my Schoology page. A demo Schoology page, and if we scroll down here, I'm going to come down to this math folder where I've put the mastery test in here. You can see it right here, mastery test chapter 1 and 2, and we'll explain that as we go through the video, but I'm going to go ahead and click on it as my son so you can kind of see what this looks like. You can see here he's already had 1 attempt and he started another attempt here, but that's not the impressive part because I'm sure you've seen that before. If we click over to the test and quiz, what we should see when we start attempt here is this should pull up a test, and you're going to see some questions here. We've got the quantity of -5 minus c times the quantity of -1. That's our first question. Remember that. Now, if we go down here, we'll kind of click through this and finish this test without entering anything. It's going to ask us to review the questions. We should be able to scroll down again. It's going to say, hey, there's some problems. You didn't answer any of these, but that's okay because that's not what we're after. Yep, we'd like to submit this. We're going to use our final attempt here to go back into the test itself, and I'm going to click start a new attempt, and you'll see that this first question now is not that -5 minus c all times the quantity of -1. It's a different question. Each time that they come in here for whatever attempts that they take, they're going to pull from a vat of questions in your question bank to pull into this test, and each time they go in, whatever student or however many different students are going to see a different set of questions, and they can be randomized, so they can even be possibly the same question but in different order. So this gives you the power back for your tests in these digital spaces. You don't have to worry as much about a screenshot. You don't have to worry about students collaborating and sharing, because if you create a pool of questions in these question banks, then you can draw from them, and the bigger the pool is, the less likely the students are going to be to see the same question. So now hopefully you see the power of this. Let's go ahead and talk about how we do this now, and we'll go through the steps of that next. So let's take a look at that now. To start, I've got a couple of things that I'd like to say. One, there are a few steps involved with this, but I'm going to show you each one individually, and so when you get through it once and you've seen me do it, you'll be golden to do this on your own. Two, I'm going to show you a process using Schoology tests and quizzes. Now here's the caveat. Schoology has said that they're going to close or disable test or quizzes for some time now. As long as I've known Schoology, they've said they're going to disable this. But it hasn't been the case because people love it and it's easy to use. What they're trying to replace it with is assessments. Now, when we do this and we go through this whole process and you think you're going to lose that work if they ever shut down tests and quizzes, you're not. Because what we're setting up for the question banks can be transferred over to assessments and an item bank. That will be shown in a different video, but you won't lose anything. Now, before we begin, we do need to know what we're going to use to start this process. One, we're going to need exam view. Okay, so we need exam view to open up, and we're going to get ourselves a free bank of test questions that has existed in the district forever. They've been moved to a team, your curriculum team, so we're going to have to access a curriculum team to get those banks. And then third, we're going to need Schoology. So using all three of these parts, what we're going to do is take those exam view questions, pre-existing questions for you, make them into a test that we're going to put into Schoology, and then we're going to make them into a question bank. So this little process flow of taking them down, making the test, and then putting them into a question bank is really what we're going to do. Once they're in a question bank, they're yours forever. You can do whatever you want. At that point, you can make your own test questions to mix in there. Even better, you can take questions from another bank that you have that may exist and put them in there. That may be a different process. You might have to take a screenshot or type them in, but if they're portable, then you can port them in too. So what you'll end up with is all of these different item banks that you can create. They can be by chapter, they can be by topic, they can be by section, however you decide to do it, however you decide to break these questions up and make as many banks as you like or as few as you like, then you can pull from them in any test that you make in Schoology. That's the power here. So let's go through the steps that we're going to do in this video. The first thing we're going to do is download from Teams. We're going to go to our curriculum team, find the test banks, and we're going to download the different exam view files because they've been moved to the curriculum teams out of the common folder. Once we have that file, we're going to open it up in exam view. And we're going to create a test, a single test, this is step 2, for all of the test questions there. From there, we're going to export that test, and this sounds funny, but as a Blackboard zip. I'll tell you specifically which one when we get there. But that zip file can be read by Schoology. So that once we have that zip file, we're going to make a test in Schoology and import this test of all of the exam view questions. Once we have that, we're going to take that exam view questions and make them into a question bank in your resources. Then we can make our test and we can pull from that question bank. So there should be about 8 steps in all. I'll put them on the screen as I go here so you can kind of see them, what you're for. It sounds like a lot, but I promise it's not bad. It's really pretty straightforward once you kind of get through it. And once you do one section and set up one item bank, the rest will just flow right through. So let's go ahead and start doing that now. Let's take a look. Okay, to start this process then, we're going to go ahead and move over to our teams. We're going to start there because that's where our test banks for exam view are. If you don't have exam view test banks, which I believe most do, or you don't want to use exam view test banks, you would just need to find your questions and add them in a different way. But this is going to go through how to use the existing exam view test banks for this process. So let's navigate over to our teams, and we're going to open it up, and we're going to click on Teams. So once we're in our teams, we're going to scroll down to our curriculum team. For this video, I'm going to use the math team. So I'm going to come down here, I'm going to open up my math team, and I'm going to go to the channel. There's one of 2 channels, I guess, where you'll find these exam view test banks. Most likely in general, but they may also exist in the common folder. At some point, we'll put these together, but right now they may be in one or both. So I'm going to go ahead and click on General, and then I'm going to go to up here to Files. So under Files, I'm going to click on that. I'm going to see that there is a folder in there called Exam View Test Banks. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And then it's going to give me all of the different curriculum for math that have Exam View Test Banks. I'm going to scroll down here to the one that I'm most familiar with, which is Algebra. Oh, where did it go? Here it is, PH Algebra 1. So I'm going to use that one for this video. So I'm going to click on that folder. It's going to take me inside, and what I should see is all of these things that has a .bnk. That's going to let me know that that's the test bank. I've already done for this demo. I've set up 2 test banks, chapter 1 and chapter 2. So we'll use chapter 3 for this part. So I'm going to go ahead and click on chapter 3. I can go into it by clicking on it, or I can use the 3 dots, but what I want to do is find download, and I can see it right here. So the quicker way is to just click on the 3 dots and then click download. So I'm going to click download, and that's going to download it out of Teams, this test bank. So it's going to download it out of Teams, this test bank, and it's going to put it in your downloads folder. Now, if you were going to do all of these at once, you can click up here in the upper corner, and that's going to select them all. It's going to take a little longer to download all of them, but you'll get them all at once. So you can decide how you want to do that, one at a time or all at once. So now that we have that, I'm going to go ahead and minimize Teams. I'm going to come down here to my taskbar, and I'm going to click on File Explorer. When I click on File Explorer, it's going to open up, and I'm going to click on Downloads, and I'm going to see in Downloads that I should see a Chapter 3 test bank in here right there at the top. And you'll notice that mine's already been associated with exam view, because I've done this once. Yours might not have that symbol there, but as long as it says chapter 3 or whatever chapter you're downloading and it has that excuse me, BNK at the end, then you're all set. So now we have it and we know where it's at. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and go over to the exam view test generator. That's the one that we're going to want to use here. There's 3 on your desktop most likely, but that's the one that you're going to want to use. If you don't have these on your desktop, you're going to need to call and put in a help desk ticket and they'll install it on there. Last year, I believe they put it on everybody's desktop, but if you don't have it, then you're going to need to get it installed there, and that's just a help ticket. So let's go ahead and click this open. We'll click on it. It should open up for us. There we go. And when I did it this year, not in previous years, I had to create an account. I'm not going to go through that process because I don't want the video to get too long, but it may ask you to create an account. It is free. You can do it all right here. So go ahead and create that account if you need to. Pause the video and then come back. So once we have the account created, I'm going to go ahead and enter my password and we're going to sign in. And then once it's signed in, it'll go ahead and open up the test builder, and you'll see that it processes for a second, but then it's going to say, what would you like to do? The way that we're going to do this is we're going to create a test in here with all of the questions from this chapter. Okay? You could pre-select your exact test if you'd like to, but if you take all of them at once, we can throw them in the test bank. So that's a far easier process. So I'm going to click on that first one. Let's go back. It says help create a test, so we're using the quick test wizard. So once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and give this a title. So for these, you may want to say something about test bank. So I'm going to say chapter 3 test bank. We're going to have to enter a name in here like 3 different times, so I'm just going to keep it simple and say chapter 3 test bank. I might in the demo have put algebra 1, but for this case I'm just going to keep it short. I'm going to go ahead and click next. Now this is where you would navigate to that test bank. Normally they're in the common folder and it's already set up if you've used it in the past. Now we have to navigate to that downloads folder where we put or downloaded that test bank from Teams. So I'm going to click this right here. It says up 1 level. There's a little file, so I'm going to click that. And I'm going to click it a couple of times until I get to a point that looks like this here, where I see program files at the top. And then I see users down here. So the users is what we want because it's in your user download. So we're going to click on users, and that's going to open up. And then there's going to be your name in here a couple of times. And it should be your name with the last initial, your first name, your first name's first initial, and your middle name's first initial. So mine's Hallam TJ. So I'm going to click on that one. You should have something similar. And then in there, I'm going to see a downloads folder. So once I see the downloads folder, that's where I need to get to. If this part gets confusing, you can always download it to your desktop and then just click on desktop instead of downloads. Either way, you're still going to have to navigate up a few folders so you can get to that user. That part you're not going to be able to bypass. All right, so now I'm going to click on downloads. You can see here there's a few because I've done this a couple of times. I'm going to go ahead and click on the one that says, oh, I'm sorry, I've done chapter 1 and 2. I'm sorry, this is where I want to choose chapter 3 because that's the one that's in that downloads folder that I've done. So yeah, 0, 1, and 2 I've already done. I'm doing chapter 3 right now, and you can even see that there was a test 1 where I did it for early Americans. So you'll see anything in that folder that is a test bank file. So if you downloaded all of them, you'll see them all here. And you can select them all at once if you want to, or you can keep it by chapter, however you choose to do that. So now that I've got it selected, I'm going to go ahead and click select. It's going to move it from the top level folder to the bottom one, indicating that you're about to use that test bank. So I'm going to go ahead and click next so that I can start this process. It's going to tell you how many questions are available in that test bank and how many you've selected. We're going to take them all, so I'm going to click select all. So now that I have them all selected, and you may not want other, and you may not want essay, and maybe you don't want short answer, maybe you just want the bimodal or multiple choice. Who knows what you want, but pick the ones that you want there. I take them all and then I'll choose to use them in Schoology or not. I can always delete them or move them out of that item bank, question bank within Schoology. So now I'm going to click next, and I'm going to go ahead and click finish here. And what it's going to do is it's going to generate a test and exam view with all of the questions from that test bank. It's going to tell me that I can change the language if I'd like to. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then you can see what this question bank is going to look like. You can scroll through. There should be 80 or 80 some type questions in here, and it's quite long. So I'm going to take, and you can see the answers at the bottom. So there's my test of all of the questions in that particular bank. Now I'm ready to export this so that I can upload it to Schoology. Okay, so I'm going to come over here to File, and I'm going to click on File. I'm going to come down to Export, and then this is where it's important. I'll put it up on the screen as well. I want to export this as a Blackboard zip file 7.1 to 9.0. That's the one you have to use. It's the one that it accepts. If you choose another one, it may not work. So be very careful to choose that particular zip file. So I'm going to go ahead and click it. It's going to start the process. Okay, the one thing that you want to pay attention to right here is that it says downloads and not in tests, because it may put it in the test folder, which you got to navigate to get to it. So I like to keep everything in the downloads because I know right where it's at, and then when I'm done with it later and I delete my downloads, this stuff all goes away. So I'm not storing things on my computer that I won't need again. So make sure that it says downloads here. It may have you in a file folder that says tests. If you do have that, go ahead and click this arrow here, and then you can navigate to your downloads like you see me doing here. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and click save. And we'll say replace here. It's going to ask us for our information now. So we're going to put this in. Remember, I told you we're going to have to name it a few times. So I'm going to say Chapter 3 Test Bank again. And then down here in the directory, I believe this is for exam view. I believe both of these are for exam view use. And so they're not so important to what we're doing because we're not going to go back in here and access them. We're just going to pull it out, put it in Schoology, and be done. So here I just have been putting Schoology. And I'm going to click OK. And you'll see that it exports the test. And then once we're done, we can minimize this window. And then we're going to come back to our File Explorer. You can see it's a little file down here at the bottom. We're going to click that. I'm going to click on Downloads. And what you should see in here is what we named Chapter 3 Test Bank. Now we've got our test bank all zipped up out of Schoology with all the questions that we pulled out of Teams. And now we're going to take and put this into Schoology. So we're going to go ahead and open up our browser window. And we're going to navigate to our Schoology. And we're going to navigate to our course that we'd like to do this. I'm going to use the demo class for this. I'm going to click in here. And then in here, we're about to make a test with those test questions in it. But first, we need to set up our question bank. So this is the spot that's going to house all of the questions. So when you make your test and it says pull them out of here, it's all set up to pull them out. So we're going to do that first. To do that, we're going to go into resources. So we'll click on resources. You'll see it opens up, and you'll see that I have a couple of existing folders in here, and you can tell by the folder with the little puzzle piece that those are question banks. Now, you'll see a different one down here with a puzzle piece inside the folder, a little bit darker. Those are item banks, and we'll talk about that later, but those are the ones that we can transfer these to if we need to. So you can see I've got Chapter 1 set up, I've got Chapter 2 set up. I'm going to go ahead and make a new one for Chapter 3, the one I'm about to import. So I'm going to go up here to Resources, and down at the bottom of Resources it says Add a Question Bank, not an item bank. That's important. Question banks goes with tests and quizzes, which is the easier one to use right now. Item bank goes with assessments, and we can convert to that later, but right now we're going to do it for just a question bank. So I'm going to click Question Bank. I'm going to name this one similar to the way I did it before. So I'm going to say Algebra 1, and I'm going to say Chapter 3. And before I was grabbing the name of what the chapter was, but this time I forgot to get that. So we'll just say it Chapter 3, and we'll click Create. So you'll see right here, we have an Algebra 1 Chapter 3. I can always go back in and change the title afterwards. So that exists. This is ready to accept the questions. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back into our course. We're going to set up a test with all of the questions in it. So this seems a little silly, but you have to import it as a test. And then once it's a test, you can upload those into your resource as a question bank. And then we make the test. So we're actually making two tests, one to import them and then one to draw from the test banks. So we'll do that next. Okay, so now it's time to leave the resources and our pre-set up folder down here, our question bank. So now we're going to go back to the actual course itself. So I'm going to click on courses. I'm going to go to my demo course. And at this spot, you may want to make a folder like I did just to house all of these tests that you're going to make so that you can import the questions. So I made one called Algebra 1 Exam View Test Banks. You can too. It can be unpublished if you like. So I'm going to go in there. And then once in here, you can see the two previous tests that I've already done. You can see that those aren't published. And I'm going to do that process again with you now. So we're going to click on Add Materials, and I'm going to come down here and click Add Test or Quiz. Not an assessment, test or quiz. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And then here I'm going to name it. I'm going to name this, what do we say, Chapter 3 test bank, just for speed. I didn't get the name. You don't have to put any of this information in. I think you have to say at least a category, so you can say homework or ungraded. It shouldn't matter. And then I'm going to unpublish this because I don't want the students to see it. And I'm going to go ahead and click create. What this is going to do is it's going to create that test in here, and it's going to go right into the test itself, like you're going to add questions. Again, you've probably done this before. So I'm going to add questions this time, but this time I'm going to come down here where it says import from test or quiz, because we pre-created one as a zip file, right? That's what that zip file process was, and I'm going to click this. So I'm going to click it. It's going to say, hey, what type of test are you importing? And we did that the Blackboard 7.1 and 9.0. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and I'm going to click next. And then it looks like nothing happens, but if you go over here on the little folder, it's going to let you navigate to where we have that file at. And we put that file inside of our downloads. So I'm going to click downloads, and I'm going to scroll up, and there we see it, Chapter 3 Test Bank. That's the one that we created, so I'm going to go ahead and get it out of my downloads now. I'm going to double click on it, and you can see that it uploads. And then I'm going to import. This may take a minute because I have to take all of those questions and put them into as Schoology. So I'll cut back once this is done, but you can see it's loading here. And then once this is finished, I'll go ahead and start the video again. Okay, so it's done loading. You can see the questions popped in here. We can actually scroll through them now. So this is into our test, right? Our test bank test. And you can see here, and I grab the little bar, you can see that there's what we say about 80 questions-ish, somewhere in there, right? Oh, 80 exactly. So those are all of our questions as a test. You could give it, I guess, but really we want to now take these from this test and import them into our question bank so that we can actually pull from them. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to options, and we're going to click on options, and we're going to see the option to choose to add questions to test, or it says to bank, but it's going to be a question bank. So we're going to click that, and you'll see it'll go through another loading process. And it's going to first ask you which questions. We want all of them because this is our entire test bank. So it's already selected all, but you can see there's a select all button if you'd like. You could pull certain ones out if you'd like to, but we're going to go ahead and click next. And then it's going to ask you to identify the bank that we want to put them in. So that's why we created the bank before we got to this part, because otherwise it wouldn't be there for us to select. So now we can go into here, select bank. And we're going to choose our home because that's our resources. And you can see right here, Algebra 1, Chapter 3. That's the bank we set up prior to this. So we're going to select that, and we're going to say Add Questions. Again, it should go through a loading process, probably not as long as the first one. All right, it looks like it finished up. So now we can go verify that our questions are now in our question bank. So we're going to go back up to Resources here. And then from Resources, we're going to go down to that Algebra 1, Chapter 3 bank. We're going to click on it, and we can see all of those previous questions. Should be 80 of them, and it's loading as we go. So it's still processing them as we go, but they'll all show up here very shortly, or just about. So you get the idea. So now all of the questions are in the question bank. Now we can go build our test. So let's go back to our course. We'll go back to the demo course, and this time I'm going to go down to my math folder. So in my math folder, you can see I've already got that practice test that we did, I showed you at the start. We'll make one just like that. So let's go into math, and this time I'm going to add materials, and I'm going to choose to make the test. Now this test is going to be the one that the students take, right, with the revolving order of questions that are going to be different. So we're going to go ahead and click that. We can name this whatever we want. We can say, I'll just say Unit 1 Mastery Test. Again, these can be quizzes, they can be warm-ups, they can be bell ringers. These can be, you can pull from these item banks for anything that you want. So the longer you have these item banks and the more questions you add into them, the more powerful they become, right? And if you set up different versions of them, then you can pull for different things. So you can kind of see where this is going, right? We're just doing a very base model here. But so Unit 1 Mastery Test, again, choose your date and time. This is actually going to be something that you give, so you're going to want to set that up. Set your point value. Choose a category like homework. Make sure this is all set. You can have this one published to kids because they will take this test, and we're going to go ahead and click Create. Now we should go into a blank test, as we see here, and then when we go to add questions this time, we're going to go down here to the option that says From a Question Bank, because we've set those up. So we're going to choose that. Now you can choose individual questions out of the bank, but the powerful one is the random questions. This is where it's going to pull randomly from those question banks. This is the one that's going to make the magic happen, if you will. So let's choose random questions. and you'll notice that it's going to pull up our resources, right? And then it's going to show you all the banks that you have available. So for this test, I want to use all 3 banks. So I'm going to choose Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3. And I'm going to say select question banks. Now in here, this is where you get to choose the number of questions that you pull from that bank. So for Chapter 1, I only want 5 questions, and I'd like them to be a point apiece because that's review. Maybe I want, another 5 questions at a point apiece for Chapter 2, and then Chapter 3, because we just did it and I'm not giving a quiz, I want to lump it in. Maybe I do more questions from this. Maybe I choose 15 and I say that those are 2 points apiece. Okay, so you get to customize what questions you're pulling from which bank. So you can see the power right here of setting up your banks correctly, because if you did it by standard or topic, you could really kind of customize what kind of a test you're giving. This one we did it as chapters, so I'm kind of limited on a broader scope. But if you broke those question banks up a little bit more small into a particular topic, you could really customize your small quizzes in your formative assessments that way. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add questions here. And then it's going to generate for me a test that will be random each time that I go to use it. And we'll go ahead and pause until we get back and this is loaded. Oh, there it is. So you can see here now, this is what the test will look like. It's got questions 1 through 5 coming from your first question bank, 6 through 10 coming from the second question bank, and then we had the 11 through 25 coming from the other one for a total of points. And you can see the point total here, and so that shows you what the test will look like. You want to probably at this point jump over to settings so that you can kind of set this up. I'm sure you've used this before, but we'll run through some of the more important ones for this setup. Submissions, you're going to want to turn that on so that they can submit to this test when you're ready. So even though it's published, they can't submit, right? So this gives you an extra ability to kind of customize when this window is open. You can have a time limit if you choose to. You can change your number of attempts, and again, if this is a mastery test, you're going to want to add some attempts here because each attempt will be different for them. So 4 questions, or I'm going to say 4 times, and I'm comfortable saying 4 times because there's 80 questions in each bank, and if I'm only pulling 5 to 15 questions out of there, I'm pretty certain that they're going to get a new one multiple times in a row, and maybe by that 4th one they see a few that they've seen before, but in general I can kind of control if they only get new questions or if I want them to see some, that they've had before. Random order, that's up to you. That's going to change the order. This will change it so that everybody taking at the same time will get different questions. So, but really, if they're pulling from it being random initially, they should be randomized already. So this would also randomize those questions as well. And then page breaks, we don't need to talk about that. Language keyboard, that's not something that we need to discuss. Question review. Are they allowed to look at the question after they submit it and change their answers? Is it resumable? Can they start and stop that test? That's up to you. Those are decisions you can make. And are their submissions viewable? This would allow them to see what they submitted and then what their correct answers are. So if I was giving a unit test, it was a summative assessment, I wouldn't turn this on because I wouldn't want to share those answers out. Even if it's randomized, I still wouldn't want to share those out. Maybe I keep a separate test bank for those. If this is a mastery test or something I'm testing for a standard that I really want them to know, maybe I put these on so that they can really test through, see their answers, correct themselves, right? So it depends on the type of test you're giving. It's more formative or, find out where they're at versus summative to kind of assess what they actually know, then that would be a decision you'd make here. All right, with that all done, you would go ahead and click Save Changes, and this test then is ready to be given. So if you go back to your class and go back to your math class, you click on it, you should see that this test here, Unit 1 Mastery, is ready for all of your students to take. And each time they take it, they're going to get different questions, and the questions will be different from the students next to them. Very powerful. I know that took quite a bit. I know that there was a lot of steps involved, but really if you look at it and kind of understand the process of pulling down the test bank, creating an exam or a test in exam view, and then uploading that as a test into Schoology so that you can import them into the test bank and then finally build your test. I know it's a few steps, but it kind of makes sense once you understand that process. And again, those test banks, you can add your own questions in. And maybe in another video, I'll show you in a quick one how to add screenshots in so you don't have to type the whole question in. There are lots of ways to kind of customize this to really up your Schoology game, but this one by far was the most important one to show you because it really gives you some leverage and power with testing in this digital space, which can be complicated as we already know. So Hopefully you stayed with us for the whole video. Hopefully you learned something new, and then when I walk into your classrooms, I'm seeing you use this and utilize it, and a big smile on your face because you feel more comfortable during your testing time, and you know that you can test for mastery now. So really, we've upped your Schoology game, and in the next video, whenever that shows up, we'll up your game there too. All right, well, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. We'll see you next time.